The moment the crew of the Aurora's Dawn stepped aboard their new ship, an uneasy excitement hung in the air. It was unlike anything they had ever experienced. The vessel was magnificent, gleaming with freshly polished alloys that reflected the harsh lights of the docking bay. Its corridors stretched endlessly, lined with smooth metal panels and illuminated by a soft white glow. Every hatch, every panel, every screen gleamed with promise. The Aurora's Dawn was supposed to be the pinnacle of human ingenuity, the ship that would carry humanity farther than they had ever gone. Commander Rylan led the team through the main corridor, his boots echoing softly against the metallic floor. He had been trained to remain calm in unusual situations, but even he felt a strange tension creeping into his chest. Behind him, the crew moved with the same cautious awe, their eyes sweeping across walls, ceilings, and the control panels that had been switched on for the first time. It was a mixture of pride and anxiety. "Deck 1 is clear," Rylan said into his comm, his voice steady. "Proceeding to the engineering bay. Keep a record of everything." The crew nodded, scanning every surface with their handheld scanners. They were trained to notice the smallest details, and today, everything mattered. Every corner could hold a clue to potential issues. Every hatch could hide a problem that would threaten their journey into deep space. As they advanced deeper into the ship, a strange sight caught Tessa, the chief engineer's attention. She froze in the middle of the corridor, her eyes narrowing. "Commander, look at this," she said. Rylan stepped closer and immediately saw what she had noticed. Dust had collected along the edges of the floor, but someone or something had walked through it. Clear footprints stretched down the corridor, perfectly preserved. They were human prints. And yet, they made no sense. The ship had been in strict lockdown for the last 72 hours. No one had entered, no doors had opened. Yet here were footprints in the dust, each one heavy and deliberate, as if someone had walked this very path yesterday. Rylan crouched to examine the prints. They varied in size and shape, some heavier, some lighter. Some showing the heel striking first, others showing the ball of the foot landing first. It was impossible. "Maybe it's a construction crew," one of the junior officers suggested nervously. Rylan shook his head. "No. Security logs confirm that nobody entered. The ship was under complete lockdown. No one could have left these prints." Tessa's brow furrowed as she crouched beside him, running a hand along the clear indentations. "It's like the ship has been walked through in some parallel timeline." Rylan frowned. "Don't speculate. Let's just document everything." They moved slowly down the corridor, marking the footprints with sensors and taking detailed recordings. Every step they took was cautious, as if disturbing the dust might make something happen. But as the team moved forward, they noticed more anomalies. A wrench was lying on the floor, as if dropped by an invisible hand. A datapad on a table displayed logs from hours before the crew had even stepped aboard, showing tasks that had supposedly been completed already. The deeper they went, the stranger it became. Rylan's gut told him something was wrong, but he refused to panic. Humanity had always faced challenges, often far worse than a few mysterious footprints. They had survived, had adapted, had learned. This was just another problem to solve. By the time they reached the engineering bay, the crew's unease had turned into tense curiosity. The room was vast, filled with complex machinery that hummed quietly, even though it had never been powered on. The temporal drift drive sat at the center, its metallic core glinting under the lights. It was an experimental engine designed to push human exploration beyond the limits of space and time. But it had never been activated. "Check the core," Rylan instructed Tessa. "Make sure there's no unexpected activity." Tessa ran her diagnostics, her fingers moving quickly across the control panels. Her scanner blinked, then displayed a reading that made her pause. "Commander, the drift drive is showing faint activity." Rylan's eyebrows shot up. "What do you mean faint activity? The engine has never been turned on." "I mean it's pulsing," Tessa said, voice tight with disbelief. "Very faint, almost imperceptible, but definitely there. Something is moving it from the inside." The crew exchanged nervous glances. The idea that the drift drive might be active on its own was unsettling. Rylan took a deep breath. All right. Document everything, but don't touch the core. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we risk any further action. Hours passed as the team inspected every corridor, every hatch, every panel. The footprints appeared everywhere, sometimes in clusters, sometimes spread thin. They led through the mess hall, past the medical bay, and even into the captain's quarters. Every step the crew took revealed more evidence that someone or something had been aboard before them. And yet, the security logs and access records confirmed there had been no entry. At one point, Tessa and another engineer, Milo, entered the cafeteria. They found a half-eaten ration pack on one of the tables, still warm as though someone had just been there. Milo reached out instinctively, then froze. "This can't be," he whispered. "We sealed the food supplies 3 days ago. No one has been in here." Tessa shook her head slowly. "It's the same pattern. The ship is echoing events from somewhere else. Maybe the future. Maybe a parallel version of itself. But it's human. Whoever left these prints is human." Rylan, standing in the doorway, clenched his fists. "We don't run from this. Humans don't flee mysteries, we solve them. Document everything. Take every reading. Nothing leaves this ship unexamined." As night fell on the crew's first day aboard the Aurora's Dawn, the corridors grew quiet. The artificial lighting bathed the halls in an eerie glow, casting long shadows that seemed to move independently of the crew. And then the footsteps began, soft at first, almost imperceptible, echoing faintly through the halls. Rylan's team froze, listening. The sound was not theirs, it was lighter, faster, always just around the next corner. "Everyone, stay alert," Rylan said, his voice calm but firm. "Do not follow the sound. Do not panic. It's probably a temporal anomaly, nothing more." But even as he spoke, the footsteps continued, moving with purpose. They seemed to be leading the crew somewhere. Each footstep pressed into the dust of the corridor, creating new patterns that intertwined with the old ones, as though layering moments from different timelines. Tessa's scanner beeped suddenly. She looked down, frowning. "Commander, there are biological readings coming from the corridors. Small, faint, almost ghost-like, but they vanish as soon as we approach." Rylan's jaw tightened. Ghosts, or future humans trying to warn us? The idea seemed ludicrous, but the crew did not hesitate. They had faced impossible odds before, against hostile planets, harsh environments, and failing systems. This was different, but it was still a problem to solve. And humans solved problems. They followed the footprints cautiously, mapping their path through the ship. Every corridor they entered, every hatch they opened, led to more mysteries. Tools that had been moved, data logs that contradicted reality, and fleeting glimpses of human shapes, out of the corner of their eyes. Milo paused, staring at a corridor where the dust had been disturbed in a spiral pattern. "It's like someone was pacing, thinking, waiting for something." "Or waiting for us," Tessa added. Rylan nodded. "Keep calm. We do not panic. We observe. We learn. And when we understand, we act." By the end of their first full day aboard the Aurora's Dawn, the crew had documented every footprint, every anomaly, and every whisper of temporal disturbance. They did not understand it yet, but they were determined to find the cause. And as they prepared to rest in their quarters, each member of the team felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. The ship was alive in a way they had never experienced. It was not just metal and circuits, it was history, and perhaps even the future, pressing its presence onto the present, and humanity, as always, refused to step back. Commander Rylan stood in the main corridor one last time before sleep. His eyes traced the faint lines of footprints fading into the distance. "We will understand this," he murmured. "No matter what, humans survive, humans endure, humans discover. That is what we do." And in the stillness of the ship, the footprints seemed to shimmer, almost as if they had heard him, almost as if they approved. Somewhere in the quiet, the faint sound of a single footstep echoed again, distant yet deliberate, marking the beginning of a journey that would test the crew, the ship, and the limits of human courage. They did not know it yet, but the Aurora's dawn had chosen them, and humanity had chosen to rise. The next day aboard the Aurora's dawn began with a quiet determination. The crew had spent the night reviewing the data collected from the mysterious footprints and anomalies, and each member knew that the ship was no ordinary vessel. It was alive in a strange, almost conscious way. The footprints, the scattered tools, the data pads with conflicting logs, they all suggested a presence that was human, yet impossibly displaced in time. Commander Rylan gathered the crew in the central hub. The air hummed softly with the ship's dormant energy, but no one spoke casually. Each face was marked with anticipation and concern. "Tessa," Rylan began, "what did the scans show overnight?" Tessa moved to the console, fingers flying across the controls. "It's strange, Commander. The drift drive is emitting faint temporal signals. They're not random. They follow a pattern, almost like the ship itself is echoing moments from its own future." "Temporal signals?" Milo asked, eyes wide. "You mean the footprints? The tools? The logs, they're all part of this?" "Yes," Tessa said. "The ship isn't just showing us anomalies. It's showing us what might happen. We are walking through the echoes of the future." Rylan's jaw tightened. "So, the ship's telling us something. It's giving us warnings or instructions. We just have to figure out how to read them." The crew exchanged nervous glances, but no one questioned the logic. Humans had always faced impossible odds. They had survived hostile planets, harsh climates, and machines that failed under stress. This was different, but they would tackle it as they always had together, calmly, with intelligence and determination. They split into teams to investigate different parts of the ship. Rylan and Tessa stayed near the drift drive, analyzing its core and attempting to understand the faint temporal pulses. Milo and two junior officers examined the corridors where the footprints were most concentrated. Everywhere they went, the pattern repeated. Human footprints that seemed to move independently, as if someone were pacing, walking, or even fleeing, but always just beyond the present. As Tessa ran her diagnostics, she noticed something remarkable. Each footprint carried slight differences, tiny variations that suggested movement through overlapping moments in time. A footprint near the engine room, for instance, showed the heel striking first, while the same footprint further along the corridor showed the ball of the foot landing first. The temporal pattern was subtle, but it was unmistakable. "It's like the ship has fragments of its own future walking around," Tessa whispered, mostly to herself. "Not fully formed, but enough to leave traces." Rylan nodded, eyes scanning the quiet engine bay. "Then we learn from it. Humans don't run from the unknown. We study it, we adapt, and we conquer it. That is what we do." Hours passed as the crew documented the anomalies. The corridors seemed to stretch unnaturally, twisting in ways that didn't make sense. In some places, walls seemed slightly displaced, like the ship was trying to realign itself with its future. Tools and equipment shifted subtly when no one was looking. Every now and then, a faint shadow flitted past the corner of someone's vision. Each time, they turned to see nothing there. By midday, Milo called over the comm. "Commander, you need to see this. The cafeteria has someone in it. Or at least, it looks like someone is moving around, but there's no one physically there." Rylan hurried to the cafeteria with the team. The room was empty, save for a data pad lying open on a table. The screen displayed a series of logs, marked with times and actions that had not yet occurred. A half-eaten ration pack sat beside it, still warm. "See," Milo said. "This is exactly like the footprints. Something human was here, but not here. Some echo of the future, maybe?" Tessa examined the data pad. The readings confirm it. The biological trace shows human activity, but it's gone by the time we reach it. "This is exactly what I saw in the engine bay. temporal echoes of humans who aren't physically present. Ryland's gaze swept the room. We cannot fear this. We use it. We map it. If the ship is showing us the future, then we study it, learn from it, and take control. We are humans. That is what we do. The team spent the next few hours tracing the footprints and following the subtle temporal distortions throughout the ship. The patterns seemed almost deliberate, as if the echoes were guiding them. Some led to the engineering bay, others to the navigation deck, and some even to corridors that had not yet been activated. Each step uncovered more evidence of the ship's unusual state. By late afternoon, Tessa and Ryland discovered an area where the temporal signals were strongest. The drift drive core itself. The energy pulses had intensified. Flickering like faint sparks in a dark sky, the echoes of footprints surrounded them, forming a complex pattern that seemed almost like a map. "Commander," Tessa said, her voice tight with excitement and worry. "I think the ship is trying to communicate. The footprints, the shifts, the logs, they all form a message. It's telling us something about the drift drive." Ryland crouched to study the pattern. "And what is it saying?" Tessa's fingers traced the paths. "We need to stabilize the core before we attempt any activation. If we don't, the ship's future will fail. These echoes, they are warnings. Humans died trying to activate the drive without stabilization, and their traces are left here, trying to guide us." Ryland's expression hardened. "Then we will do what humans do. We do not run from danger. We face it. We understand it, and we succeed where others failed." The crew worked with renewed purpose. Every team member knew that their survival depended on learning from the temporal echoes. They analyzed the energy readings, adjusted the stabilizers, and reinforced every critical system in the core. It was grueling work, demanding precision and focus. The shadows in the corridors seemed to watch them. The faint echoes of footsteps pacing alongside their own movements. But the humans pressed forward. As night fell, the crew noticed a new phenomenon. Some corridors flickered, showing brief glimpses of future events. In one, they saw the ship badly damaged, its panels warped and melted, alarms blaring. In another, the ship appeared triumphant, its systems humming perfectly, with future versions of the crew moving confidently through the halls. "Those are the possible outcomes," Tessa said, her voice low. "One is disaster. The other, success. And the drift drive core is the key." Ryland nodded. "Then we make the right choice. We are humans. We do not accept failure. We correct it before it happens." Late into the night, the footsteps became more pronounced. They moved with intent, echoing down the empty corridors. Milo and one of the junior officers followed the sound, careful not to disturb the dust or the traces left behind. Each step revealed subtle hints. Tools placed in strategic positions, panels slightly adjusted, and objects that had not yet been used but seemed ready. Tessa monitored the readings from the drift drive. "Commander, the temporal signals are converging. The echoes are aligning with our actions. If we continue this, we may be able to learn directly from them, from the humans who left these traces." Ryland's eyes gleamed. "Then we proceed. This is what humans do. We take every challenge, no matter how impossible, and we find a way through. No one before us succeeded, but we will." By the early hours of the morning, the crew had mapped nearly every temporal anomaly on the ship. The drift drive pulses had stabilized slightly under Tessa's careful adjustments, and the team began to understand the complex interaction between the ship, the future echoes, and their own present actions. Milo paused in the corridor, staring at a swirling pattern of footprints. "Commander, these aren't just warnings. They're instructions. Every movement, every placement of tools. It's like the ship is teaching us how to survive and succeed." Ryland smiled faintly. "Exactly. Humans survive because we learn. We adapt. We endure. And now, the ship itself is helping us do what no one else could." As the sun rose outside the docking bay, bathing the ship in pale golden light, The crew stood together in the central hub. The corridors were still filled with faint echoes of footsteps, but they no longer felt threatening. They were guidance. A roadmap from the humans who had come before, even if those humans existed only in the possible futures of the ship. Rylan looked at his team, pride swelling in his chest. We've learned a lot in the last 24 hours. But this is only the beginning. The drift drive is the key to everything. And humans, as always, will find a way. Tessa nodded, her fingers hovering over the controls of the drift drive. The future echoes are strong. If we follow their guidance carefully, we can prevent the disaster, and maybe even unlock the drive safely for the first time. Rylan took a deep breath. Then that is exactly what we will do. We do not fear time. We master it. Humans survive. Humans adapt. Humans rise. The crew returned to their stations, determination etched on every face. The Aurora's dawn was no longer just a ship. It was a challenge, a puzzle, and an ally. Its temporal anomalies, once frightening and mysterious, were now a source of insight and guidance. And humanity, true to form, had accepted the challenge. Somewhere in the quiet corridors, the faint echoes of footsteps continued to pace. They led the crew onward, guiding them through the uncertainty of the ship's temporal distortions. And humanity, as always, moved forward with courage, intelligence, and unshakable resolve. For the first time, it felt as though the Aurora's dawn was truly alive, and humanity was ready to rise to the challenge. The Aurora's dawn had become more than a ship to its crew. It was a puzzle, a teacher, and a warning all at once. The echoes of human presence from the future footprints, half-moved tools, datapads with impossible logs, were no longer mere curiosities. They were instructions, subtle guides left by humans who had yet to exist. The crew had spent the past day studying, mapping, and learning from these temporal traces. And now they faced the ultimate question. How could they communicate back, influence the future, and ensure the ship's survival? Commander Rylan walked through the central corridor with Tessa and Milo. The corridor was quiet, but the faint impressions of footprints were everywhere, twisting and overlapping, leading toward the drift drive core. The air was filled with the low hum of the ship, steady but vibrating with latent energy. Tessa, Rylan said, voice firm. We've seen what the ship wants to teach us. But now, we need to act. How do we respond? How do we talk to the echoes? Tessa frowned, studying her console. I think the footprints are more than guidance. They are feedback. Every time we adjust a tool or stabilize a system, the next pattern changes slightly. The future humans are showing us the results of our actions. But it's subtle. If we can understand the rhythm, the sequence, maybe we can influence what happens. Milo shook his head, pacing. It's insane. We're supposed to follow ghost traces, adjusting a machine that hasn't even been fully tested, while listening to echoes of people who don't even exist yet? Rylan smiled faintly. Insane or not, humans survive because we tackle the impossible. That's what we do. The crew split into teams again. Tessa and Rylan worked in the drift drive core, monitoring the fluctuating pulses of energy. Milo and the juniors traced the footprints in the corridors, watching for changes and trying to match each subtle movement. The process was meticulous. Each adjustment to the stabilizers was measured, each sequence recorded, each variation studied. Hours passed. The temporal echoes began to respond more clearly. The footsteps in the corridors aligned in patterns, almost like a code. Some led directly to a malfunctioning panel, others to a safety hatch that needed reinforcement. Every new trace gave a hint of the future, sometimes showing success, sometimes disaster. Tessa leaned over the console, tracing the pulses of the drift drive. Commander, look at this. Every time we stabilize a particular module, the patterns in the corridors shift. It's as if the future versions of us or the humans leaving these echoes are reacting to our choices in real time. Rylan studied the shifting footprints. Then we are no longer just following them. We are part of the equation. Humans don't just survive by reacting. We survive by understanding, predicting, and shaping outcomes. The crew worked tirelessly, adjusting the drift drive with precise care, all while observing the changes in the temporal patterns. Milo noticed something peculiar. In the navigation deck, a set of footprints had formed into a circle, as though pacing in thought. At the center of the circle was a datapad that displayed a warning, written in the future: "Do not activate without stabilization. You will fail." Ryland's jaw tightened. "We've seen that warning already. But now it's more urgent. We cannot activate until every module is stable." "That is the lesson," Tessa nodded. "Exactly. The future is warning us. Humans died in the previous timeline because they ignored these instructions. But we won't. We learn, we adapt, and we survive. That is what humans do." As night fell over the ship, the echoes became more pronounced. Shadows flickered along the corridors, moving in patterns that mirrored human actions, though no one was physically there. Footsteps led the crew to areas that required maintenance, shifted panels to reveal hidden tools, and even indicated weak points in the hull that might fail during a jump. Ryland followed one sequence to the engine bay, where a faint shadow paused, as if waiting for him. The footsteps were deliberate, measured, and oddly reassuring. He realized that the echoes were not trying to frighten them, they were guiding them, teaching them how to prevent disaster. The crew gathered in the central hub to review their progress. Every system had been checked, every anomaly recorded, and the drift drive had been partially stabilized. The echoes now seemed to form a pattern that could be understood as a sequence of steps. Stabilize, adjust, reinforce, then carefully monitor. Tessa's eyes glowed with determination. "Commander, we can do this. The ship is teaching us. We have all the information we need. Now it's up to us to follow the instructions precisely." Ryland nodded. "Humans survive because we rise to challenges. We face the impossible and overcome it. That is who we are. That is what we do." As the crew prepared to follow the final sequences, the temporal echoes intensified. The corridors flickered, showing brief visions of possible futures. In one vision, the ship was damaged, smoke rising from the engine bay. In another, it sailed flawlessly through the stars, its systems humming perfectly. Future versions of the crew moved confidently, coordinating with precision. "These are the outcomes," Tessa said, voice low. "One is failure, the other success, and the drift drive determines which future occurs." Ryland's gaze hardened. "Then we ensure success. Humans do not leave fate to chance. We take control, even of time itself." The crew worked in harmony, each step guided by the footprints and the shifting shadows. Panels were reinforced, modules adjusted, and systems monitored with meticulous care. Every action they took was mirrored in the temporal echoes, which shifted subtly to reflect the consequences of their decisions. Hours turned into night, and the ship seemed to breathe with them. The hum of the engines, the soft glow of the lights, and the rhythmic patterns of the footprints created a strange harmony. The echoes were no longer frightening, they were partners in survival, teaching the crew the lessons that would ensure the ship's success. Milo paused in a corridor, studying a complex pattern of footprints. "Commander, these aren't just warnings, they're instructions. Every step, every placement of tools, it's a map for survival. We just have to follow it exactly." Ryland smiled faintly. "Exactly. Humans survive because we learn, adapt, and endure. And now, the ship itself is teaching us. We will succeed where others failed." Tessa monitored the drift drive, watching the pulses of energy fluctuate. "The core is stabilizing, but it's delicate. Any wrong move could trigger a chain reaction. We have to follow the echoes perfectly." Ryland nodded. "Then we do exactly that. Humans face danger, but we do not fear it. We overcome it. That is what we do." The crew continued their work deep into the night, following the temporal patterns, adjusting the systems, and reinforcing the ship. The footprints led them to weak points, guided their hands, and even seemed to anticipate their actions. Every step brought them closer to understanding the drift drive and the ship itself. By the early hours of morning, the crew had completed the stabilization sequence. The drift drive pulsed steadily, no longer erratic, but glowing with controlled energy. The temporal echoes began to fade, their purpose fulfilled. The corridors, once filled with mysterious footprints, now appeared orderly, clean, and stable. Tessa looked around the engine bay, a mixture of relief and triumph on her face. "Commander, we did it. The ship is stable. The echoes have completed their guidance. We are ready." Rylan placed a hand on her shoulder, pride evident in his eyes. "Humans survive because we rise to challenges. We learn from mistakes, adapt, and master even the impossible. The ship has tested us, but we have proven ourselves." As the crew gathered in the central hub, a final message appeared on the console. It was brief, simple, and filled with assurance. "We knew you would succeed. Humans always do." The crew exchanged smiles, their fatigue replaced by exhilaration. The Aurora's Dawn was no longer just a ship. It was a testament to human resilience, ingenuity, and courage. And the echoes of the future footprints, shadows, and warnings had served as both teacher and guide, proving that humanity could face even the impossible and emerge victorious. Rylan looked around at his crew, pride swelling in his chest. "We've learned much. But this is only the beginning. The drift drive is ready. The ship is ready. And humanity always rises to the challenge." The sun began to rise outside the docking bay, casting golden light through the ship's windows. The corridors were clear, the system stable, and the echoes of the past and future had merged into a single truth. Humans survive. Humans endure. Humans master the impossible. Somewhere in the quiet corridors, the faint traces of footsteps lingered, a reminder of the lessons learned and the victories achieved. And humanity, true to form, moved forward with courage, intelligence, and unshakable resolve, ready to explore the stars and rewrite the limits of possibility. The Aurora's Dawn hummed quietly, its system stabilized, corridors cleared, and the temporal echoes that had guided the crew now faded into stillness. The ship was ready, or so it seemed, but Commander Rylan knew better. Humanity never rested at mere readiness. The drift drive was the key to everything. It could propel the ship beyond the limits of space, perhaps even through time, but activating it carried unknown risks. One misstep could destroy the ship and the future it carried. Rylan gathered his crew in the central hub. The room was dim, the faint glow of the drift drive pulsing through the hull. Tessa's fingers hovered over the controls. Milo monitored the sensors, and the junior officers stood alert, ready for any unexpected anomaly. "This is it," Rylan said, his voice steady, resolute. "The ship is stable. The echoes have done their part. Now it's ours. We activate the drift drive, and humanity takes the next step. Whatever happens, we do it together. That is what humans do." The crew nodded, determination etched into their faces. They had faced impossible odds before, guided by ghostly footprints, strange anomalies, and impossible warnings from the future. Now, the ultimate test lay before them: to master the drift drive and shape their own destiny. Tessa began the sequence, her fingers moving with practiced precision. The drift drive hummed softly, then louder, pulsing with energy that seemed to vibrate through the ship itself. Lights flickered along the corridors, faint shadows stretching and shifting as if the ship itself were alive, aware of the critical moment unfolding. "Core stability holding," Tessa reported. "Energy levels are within safe limits. We can proceed with the final activation sequence." Rylan's hand rested lightly on the console. "Do it. Get." The drift drive surged. The ship vibrated, the hum growing into a powerful resonance. The corridors seemed to stretch and ripple, as if the fabric of space itself responded to the engine. The faint traces of footprints from the temporal echoes shimmered briefly, as though acknowledging the crew's actions, then vanished entirely. Milo monitored the readings nervously. "Commander, Energy output is spiking. Fluctuations in the temporal field are increasing. We need to maintain focus, or the core could destabilize. Ah, Ryland's jaw tightened. We are human. We endure. We adapt. We survive. Steady, team. Follow the plan. The ship shuddered violently. Panels rattled, lights flickered, and alarms briefly sounded. The corridors twisted unnaturally, and for a moment, it felt as if the Aurora's dawn was on the edge of being torn apart. Yet the crew did not panic. They moved with precision, reinforcing panels, adjusting stabilizers, and monitoring the drift drive's response. The temporal readings spiked, showing brief glimpses of alternate outcomes. In one, the ship was torn in two, fire and smoke filling the engine bay. In another, the Aurora's dawn sailed flawlessly through the stars, its systems humming perfectly, crew members moving confidently as they navigated the unknown. Tessa's eyes darted across the console. Commander, the temporal field is unstable. We need to synchronize the energy pulses with the stabilizers, or the ship could be destroyed. Ryland's voice was calm but firm. Do it. Humans face danger, but we do not flee. We master it. That is what we do. The crew worked in perfect coordination. Every adjustment, every reinforcement, every calculated move followed the subtle patterns left by the temporal echoes. The ship responded, the vibrations lessening, the hum steadying. The corridors, once chaotic with strange shifts and shadows, became stable. The Aurora's dawn itself seemed to approve. The lights glowing steadily along every panel and floor. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The drift drive pulsed with immense energy. The hum, now a harmonious resonance that filled the ship. The crew held their positions, eyes fixed on the consoles, hands ready to react to any anomaly. Then, a sudden calm descended. The vibrations stopped, the lights glowed evenly, and the temporal readings indicated a stable field. The ship was no longer threatened by chaotic fluctuations. The drift drive had stabilized. Its energy contained perfectly within the core. Tessa exhaled, a mixture of relief and awe on her face. Commander, we did it. The drive is stable. The ship is stable. Everything is perfect. Ryland smiled, pride swelling in his chest. Humans survive because we rise to challenges, no matter how impossible. We learn from what came before. We adapt, and we master it. That is what we do. But the crew did not relax just yet. The final test was activation. Could the drift drive propel the Aurora's dawn through uncharted space safely? Could it carry humanity beyond the boundaries of known reality? Ryland gave the command. Full activation. Let's see how far humanity can go. Tessa initiated the final sequence. The drift drive roared to life, a surge of energy that rippled through every deck. The ship trembled, then lifted slightly, as if testing its strength against an invisible force. The corridors shimmered, the lights dancing along the walls, and for a brief instant, the crew felt as though they were suspended between reality and possibility. Then, the ship moved. Slowly at first, then faster, gliding smoothly through the docking bay, as if the boundaries of space were bending to its will. The hum of the drift drive was a song of triumph, a testament to human ingenuity and courage. Milo laughed, relief and excitement filling his voice. We're doing it! We're really doing it! Ryland's gaze swept over the crew. This is what humans do. We face the impossible. We adapt. We survive. And we rise beyond what was thought possible. As the Aurora's dawn broke free from the docking bay and entered uncharted space, the crew observed something incredible. The faint echoes of the future, the footprints and shadows that had guided them, shimmered one last time. They seemed to acknowledge the success of the mission, fading into nothingness as if satisfied that humanity had passed the ultimate test. Tessa's fingers hovered over the console, monitoring the drift drive's output. Commander, the ship is fully stabilized. The drive is functioning beyond expectations. The future, our future, is in our hands. Rylan nodded. Then we chart it. Together. Humanity has proven itself once again. We do not fear the unknown. We master it. The crew moved through the ship with renewed confidence. Every corridor, every hatch, every panel gleamed with the knowledge that they had faced what others could not. The drift drive was no longer a mysterious, dangerous experiment. It was a triumph, a tool that would allow humanity to explore, to discover, and to rise beyond their limitations. As they gazed out of the observation windows, the stars stretched endlessly before them, uncharted and full of possibility. The Aurora's dawn was no longer a ship merely designed for exploration. It was a symbol of human courage, ingenuity, and resilience. It carried the proof that humans could face impossible odds, learn from anomalies, and master even the most unpredictable forces of time and space. Milo turned to Rylan, a grin spreading across his face. "We really did it, Commander. We proved it. Humans always rise." Rylan placed a hand on his shoulder. "Yes, we did. And this is just the beginning. There are no limits for humans who refuse to surrender to fear. No obstacle too great. No challenge too impossible. We will rise. Always." The crew gathered in the central hub, their eyes reflecting the soft glow of the drift drive. They were tired, but exhilarated. They had faced a mystery that could have destroyed them, followed echoes from a future that did not yet exist, and mastered a machine that defied comprehension. And humanity had prevailed. As the Aurora's dawn sailed into the unknown, the faint whispers of the temporal echoes, the footprints, shadows, and traces of human presence were gone. Their task had been completed. The crew understood what they had learned from these echoes, that humans survive because they face challenges head-on, adapt, and rise. That is what they had done, and that is what they always would do. Tessa watched the stars streak past, her heart pounding with excitement. "Commander, the future isn't written, it's ours to shape." Rylan nodded, gazing forward. "And humanity will shape it. We survive. We endure. We conquer. And we rise. Always." The Aurora's dawn moved farther into the cosmos, its systems humming steadily, its crew ready for anything. The mysteries of the universe awaited them, but humanity was ready. They had faced the impossible, mastered it, and emerged stronger. And somewhere, in the vast stretches of uncharted space, the ship seemed to pulse with quiet approval, as if acknowledging the triumph of the humans aboard it. They were explorers, problem-solvers, masters of challenges beyond imagination. The echoes of the past had taught them. The anomalies had guided them. But it was humanity itself that had triumphed. They had proven that no obstacle, no paradox, no uncertainty could stop the spirit of humans. The Aurora's dawn continued its journey, carrying its crew and the promise of humanity into a future defined not by fear, but by courage, ingenuity, and unshakable resolve. For humanity, the stars were not the limit. They were only the beginning, and humans would always rise.